Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey!
Hey.
Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of the Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
How are you, love? What's going on today?
I'm dying. I figure.
Oh.
I am having my ass kicked by hay fever today. I've been sneezing like a lunatic. So if I suddenly mute my mic and then do a series of really weird facial expressions, that's what's happening. I'm not being possessed by demons.
I thought you were going to go all zen in the motor mechanic book and go, I'm dying because really, once you're born, every day you just start to die. But you're actually talking about it more seriously. And
It
because
is
we've been
just
all like,
slow march to the grave.
we've all been all excited in the build up to our first guest, we forgot to do this. So just let me know. Are we grooving?
Oh, smooth, yes.
And it's floating away. It's going away. Good. Sorry. That's because we're so professionals, guys. We forgot to do our sound check before we started. Lots going on. Merch store is reopened with multiple colours now. I got the hint. When's the green buffer coming, Pat? Where's the green? Okay. I hear you. But we'll talk about that all shortly, give you all a heads up. Really big show tonight. Chlöe Swarbrick coming up next. At the end of Chlöe Swarbrick, well, maybe we'll do a bit of a crossover. Craig Renney, our HYEFU reporter, not quite, but you know what we're talking about, will be coming up as well. And really HYEFU as well. So that's kind of the show for tonight. And of course, lots of lovely chats and hanging out with you guys and having good times. And I spent time on Twitter today. Oh my God, it was so fun. Because Twitter is like it's not the real, we always say it's not the real world, but now it's like, you know, like you see in horror movies, like Halloween, that's like Twitter. It's like going in and it's like being in Halloween movie. It's fantastic. It was so much fun. We'll talk more about that
every
through
time
the
I
night.
get tempted, and I do, it's like walking into like the wrong room at a party where everybody's just doing like intravenous drugs or something like that. You're just like, oh, this is the wrong scene. Sorry. Bye.
After my conversation on Twitter, I came back with one question, and let's welcome Chlöe Swarbrick to the show. Kia ora, Chloe. Welcome.
Kia ora.
Because I'm going to ask you the question, which was my summary of lots of fighting and having fun on it today. Chewy, you know the insult you use to people when you want to get. I used it to someone today. I won't say it on here, but I'll show you. You'll be proud of me with my insults. It was a fun time. This was my end up, and I'll ask you. This is my first question to you, Chloe. Welcome to the show. So lovely to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Speaking of HYEFU and the result today, this is my question. It says, so here's the question, Munters. Don't care about whataboutisms aimed at Labor, because they'll go, but what about the last guys? If Willis, Luxon and the rest were not choosing to take $17 billion less based on their tax cuts and landlord benefits, would today's HYEFU been as bad? That was my question to Twitter. And then I said, come on, be honest. That was a fun question. But what are your thoughts?
Honestly, no, it would not have been as bad. What we have represented in HYEFU, this is my copy with all of my little post-its in there, and we updated with the budget policy statement also, is that the government has self-inflicted an even deeper and worse recession, which has been brought about by the intentional choices that it has made to knowingly increase inequality, to lay people off, but also to punch down on beneficiaries. So, we're in a pretty sorry state of affairs, but I think it's really important for everybody to know that that's not inevitable. That is the consequence of current political choices. The double down on the tax system that IRD told us last year is actually profoundly unequal. That IRD research commissioned by David Parker, when he was Minister for Revenue, told us that the top 311 households in this country hold more wealth combined than the bottom 2.5 million New Zealanders, which is not an accident, but a consequence of a tax system which successive governments have nursed, which sees those at the top pay an effective tax rate less than half of that of the average New Zealander. And as you rightfully point out, Pat, those decisions made in the May budget for trickle-down tax cuts, which, I don't know if many people are really feeling them in their back pocket at this point in time, this far on, especially with the increases to costs for, early childhood, for public transport, for their prescription fees, and then the decaying infrastructure around us. Christopher Luxon told us that he'd be making all these hard choices, and what I see is that he was quite comfortable allowing for, capital gains for landlords at the expense of the infrastructure that everybody else relies on.
We're going to bring Craig Renney on, and because we love being the dumbest people in the room, and we do it so well, and he'll educate us all about HYEFU, which does sound like an 80s kung fu movie to me. For some reason, it's got that vibe about it. Wouldn't be an appropriate kung fu movie today.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
It would be racially insensitive to have that as a kung fu movie today, but in the 80s, that could have been an 80s kung fu movie. Very good, Sarah. Hey, you easily fucked up. Hey, Willis. As a nutshell, though, we're not going to get into surplus for longer. The books are looking worse, and I just. When I heard or saw on the news that they were $13 billion out from what they thought, and then I realized there was $14 billion worth of tax cuts, it's one of those, if you don't laugh, you're going to cry. I did audibly laugh because, and I think I did a tweet that said something like, who's going to tell her? They're $13 billion short. There's $14 billion in tax cuts. Who's going to tell her? And people on my Twitter, people going, I will. But isn't it just as simple as that?
Look, so getting Craig on is going to be really useful to actually unpack this in ways that make sense to regular people, because he's very, very skilled in this.
Yeah.
But yes, you are connecting the dots correctly. If those decisions had not been made around those trickle-down tax cuts, then that money could have been invested productively in our education system, in our healthcare system, in our infrastructure, and we wouldn't be relying on, the government now talking about user pays charges. And probably public-private partnerships, which we all know are going to cost us more in the long run anyway. And I think this is what really, really struck me, especially around the rhetoric that we heard from the Minister of Finance and from the Prime Minister today, is, guys, they are gearing the country up for privatisation. And this is the playbook of austerity. What happens is right-wing governments come in, they starve public infrastructure and they cut back on public spending. Then they blame those public programs for failing to deliver because they've been set up to fail to deliver because they're not being adequately funded. And then they argue to privatise those things, which take those costs off of the government books, but massively increase the costs for everyday New Zealanders. We've seen it, time and time again, that the Nats have been in charge. So it's unfortunately
you missed a step though. Because normally what happens is when they're in opposition, they tell you government doesn't work, and then they get in and they break government. And then, so that's the thing. It's like, and then when they break government, they step back and they go, see, we always told you it doesn't work, when it's them that's broken it. So there's that element of fulfilling that narrative from opposition as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is just also where it just, as somebody who is very, very earnest and very, very nerdy and really tries to see good faith in the other arguments that are kind of presented in the public and the political spectrum, just for sake of trying to engage meaningfully on the arguments that are being put forward. The government is telling New Zealanders, look, it literally says in Nicola Willis's budget policy statement, the top priority here is to build a stronger, more productive economy that lifts real incomes and increases opportunities for New Zealand. Do you know what else was released today? News from another Crown Minister that the minimum wage is only going to go up by 1.5%, which is lower than the projected rate of inflation. It is the lowest increase to the minimum wage in 25 years, I think, and pretty much my entire lifetime. Then you have this point around a more productive economy. Productivity is premised upon public investment in the infrastructure that all of us rely on, and investment in the likes of education. This government is making a real noise about the fact that it's cutting back on humanities investment in humanities education in particular, but also on a number of other programs that are out there. But also, we have it on the record from Treasury and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand at Finance and Expenditure Select Committee hearings, where I've directly asked them over the last few years, what is the most productive form, or could we have a more productive tax system? And they have been crystal clear that if we were to baseline implement a capital gains tax, then we could start to end the state-sanctioned casino that is our housing market, and start to maybe begin to treat that like the human right that we've always said that it actually is and signed up to international conventions upon, and then start to see some of that investment, that capital, go into the productive economy that actually employs people. But no, what is the first thing that this government did in its mini budget at the end of last year and moving into the May budget in 2024? It did those trickle-down landlord tax cuts of $2.9 billion. Make it make sense, guys.
Well, Chewy's the one to make it make sense around housing, because that's been his bag for a long time about non-productive investment. Chewy, hey, off you go, sir.
Everything hinges on housing. Everything. Everybody's ignored it. Pat, you mentioned a figure. It was a big multi-billion-dollar figure. What was the figure?
It depends what we're talking about. 14 billion in tax cuts, 13 billion in the whole, 3 billion in landlords.
Okay, so I did some scratch math while you were talking, and I wasn't paying attention. So they've got all these billions of dollars that they're just gone now. 3 billion for the Otago Hospital, 3 billion for ferries, 3 billion for housing, 3 billion for nurses, 3 billion for teachers, 3 billion on Nelson and East Coast hospitals. That gets us to $18 billion. Isn't that pretty much our wish list?
Well, but they're only taking 17 billion in, Chewy, so it's never going to work. They're out by $1 billion, so they might as well do none of it. I mean, come on, if you can't do it all, you might as well do none of it.
I didn't study English, so I don't know numbers.
Hey, Nicola Willis did. She studied English. That's her qualifications. That's another conversation I've been having on Twitter today that we'll get to later. Sorry.
There has been so much discussion. Like, I know we have talked and others have talked about capital gains tax, and it was always the big boogeyman of the room, and everyone's coming for your investment portfolio, and you'll die cold and alone and destitute with nothing if Labor brings it in, or if anybody touches it. And we must have, if we're even going to consider it, there's got to be all of these caveats and carve outs, and we've got to have a different name for it and all of this sort of stuff. Do you think all of this discussion and this very focused talk about it now with National at the wheel and just seeing what they're doing, do you think this is going to put people closer to accepting that this is what we need to do? Because we've been bouncing this ball off the wall for a long time.
Yeah, we have been. There's a number of layers to unpack in that. The first thing that I would say is that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the OECD, two institutions that are not particularly well renowned at all for being progressive, but actually quite orthodox and relatively right-wing in their economic positioning, have recently made statements, including in their missions to Aotearoa, where they have pointed out that as a result of us not having a capital gains tax, stamp duty, inheritance tax, or anything along of that ilk of wealth tax or otherwise, that we are an outlier internationally, and particularly amongst those OECD countries, for not having a form of taxation that is intentionally going about redistributing. And it comes at the expense of productivity. So I think, firstly, we're not having a rational debate or discussion about tax at all in this country. I do think as well, and look, I'll be pretty explicit about it, because obviously, I'm in the Greens for a reason. I've got, some pretty strong views, and I'll happily debate them with absolutely anybody. I've been trying to get Christopher Luxon to do an economics debate with me for a long time now. So if you guys want to host it, if Prime Minister Luxon would be keen to come on PHU.
He doesn't answer our emails, Chloe. I'm sorry to say. He and David Seymour and Nicola Willis, none of them answer our emails, but just so you know.
Yeah. But we have seen that, unfortunately, the last time that we had Labor at the helm, that they refused to implement a capital gains tax as well. And obviously they laid that at the feet of the Right Honourable Winston Peters, but I think the political calculus has unfortunately been such that we haven't forced this issue. So what I am hoping is that in the next 2 years, as we get to election 2026, that election 2026 is going to be the tax election. It has to be the tax election. If we go back to those figures that I was pointing to before from that High Wealth Individuals report from the IRD, the wealthiest people in this country pay an effective tax rate less than half of that of the average person. That means that the multi-millionaires are paying half the effective tax rate of our nurses and our teachers and you and me and the public servants who are on the front line of helping and assisting people, right? That is so deeply and profoundly unfair. But as you guys rightly point out, we have unfortunately been in this situation where tax has been treated as this bogeyman. But what we're in fact seeing is that as a result of the austerity approach that the current government is taking and the layoffs that have been occurring as a result, that the government's tax take that it needed in order to make its books balance are lower than expected because income tax projections and GST projections weren't met with reality. Reality was lower than what those projections were. So this is the thing about even the right-wing orthodoxy and the way that their kind of economic modeling works, is that they also rely on taxation. Taxation makes this country go around, it builds the public infrastructure, or we rely on debt, or we rely on public-private partnerships, which increase the cost of that in the long run for all of us anyway. So let's just have a straight up and honest conversation about it.
It's that idea that if we want to have the privileges or the resources of a Scandinavian country, we sort of need to pay the taxes that the Scandinavian countries do. But for some reason, some people think that we can pay the taxes of the US, but want the benefits of those Norways and Swedens and stuff, and the two don't go together.
Well, I think you're raising a really important point there, Pat, which is that, you know, to just be oversimplified in all of this, we are basically, as a country, faced with the option of whether we want to become more like the United States of America, where it costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go to the hospital to be treated for, you know, an emergency, or to have a baby. Or we could go down the track of those European countries and we could implement a fairer tax system whereby we invest in the public infrastructure that all of us rely on, and in turn actually create a more productive environment which employs people, develops more skills, and keeps people in this country. Yet in lieu of that, what we're seeing, and going more down that American track of things, is that young people are leaving this country in hordes.
Yep, absolutely. We do want to use this chat because, Chloe, second year in a row, we should have some kind of like medal or something. The fan fave, one of the fan faves has come up, so well done you.
We should get a sash.
Yeah.
Even better if it's on a sash.
In the colour of the party we're talking to. So we do want to reflect on the year as well. And I think I've seen you be interviewed recently, or at least a clip on maybe One News, that you yourself acknowledged for the Greens. It's been a bit of a tough old year from time to time. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel honestly like I've been a bit of a broken record, but I truly mean it. I mean, you know, the weird thing about this job is that you're confronted with a bajillion cameras every other day, and people will kind of, you know, throw a million questions at you, which on your worst days kind of sound like a million different iterations of why do you suck so much? And all I've kind of had to say to those journalists is, you know, the reality is we've been confronted with the situations that we've been confronted with. Of course, this is not the hand that I would have chosen to have been dealt, but it has been dealt, and we've got to deal with it. And I think that hopefully, and this is what definitely helped, you know, as we worked through that process, is when people can see in the fullness of time that we did absolutely everything that we could in line with our values, and yeah, that I rest my head at night knowing that we did the best that we could. And that's that, really.
looking forward to where to from here. There was a point, I don't know if we were talking to you or another Green member, or maybe just me and Chewy were talking about, is there a future that you can see where the Greens are the dominant party on the left, like Labour is the little brother? Is that a realistic view for you guys, or is it always a support role?
I do see that as a more than realistic potential into the future, and something that, you know, is part of the reason that I'm in the Green Party. You know, you don't get into the Greens because you want to be in power for power's sake. You get into the Greens because you want to fundamentally redistribute power. So when I think about how we go about achieving the things that we aspire to achieve, and something else which does actually need to be shouted out is we did put out Kia ora Anamata, which is our emissions reduction plan, standing in stark contrast to the government's terrifying so-called emissions reduction plan. Our one reduces emissions more than 5 times what theirs does, and proposes a green jobs guarantee and a range of other things which would also improve people's lives. But I think it's vision documents like that, manifestos and policies, which will demonstrably improve people's lives and improve the outcomes for the planet that we all share in common, which showcase, I guess, a better world that we could live in. And how we get there is by building political power to actually implement these things. So I think that there's an interesting parallel here to the conversation that we were just having about the political inertia that we've experienced and the turn taking between the legacy parties of Labour and National, as they're both, over the past few decades, led governments by just deciding that this is the Overton window of what they deem to be politically possible. That Overton window needs to be smashed because it is not serving us, and it has not served us for more than 40 years. And I think the unfortunate reality is a lot of people rightfully got excited about and on board with the idea of transformation 6 or 7 years ago now, and unfortunately saw that we were delivered tinkering. And I think for a number of people, especially communities that I directly engage with, that is so deeply disheartening and has eroded for many faith and trust that transformation is even plausible. And that's the work that we have to do, is to remind people that, this stuff doesn't happen by itself. No one is coming to save us. And in order for us to transform this political system, this thing that we call an economy, which is literally just all of us and the rules that we put in place in order to govern the kind of outcomes that we want, well, regular people need to not leave politics to the politicians, because we'll get what we've always got.
Yeah. I think as well, just from a logistics point of view, if you're going to have a rough year, it's pretty good to have it in the first year of the cycle rather than the third, eh?
And I've got to say, while we've been dealing with things, I think that we've also managed to land a few big hits, while also, really spending the time to properly articulate what an alternative could look like. Because that's definitely something that I hear from people out there across the country, is a frustration that politicians can get so sucked into the day-to-day tit for tat that they don't raise their head above it and go, hey guys, here's actually the plan, here's the reason that we can all be excited. And I actually saw that represented. I've been doing a fun little experiment since I became co-leader, and have been invited to address all of these big audiences, especially union audiences. We're at a few different union conferences throughout this year. I've stood up in rooms of 300, 400, 500 people, and asked people, just off the cuff, who here is excited about the future. And guys, it's so depressing. In each of those rooms, fewer than half a dozen people or so put their hands up. And I think that is precisely this government's strategy, part and parcel of moving ahead with so much awfulness at such pace. It is intended to disenfranchise and to disenchant people and to switch people off. But the more people that switch off, the more power that is handed to those who want to have that power and that privilege to continue orienting themselves in the direction that they are. So the only way that we are going to turn this ship around is if regular people continue to engage with politics. And that's what I want to mahi to you guys for what you've been doing and providing this platform and this space and sharing this information with people, because it is so, so critical that people understand what's going on out there.
Yeah, I think so. Chloe, sir, jump in.
I just want to say, I think the green tax policy from the last election was brilliant and didn't nearly get enough play in the media. And I think the messaging around that of we are going after the wealthy tax dodgers, not Daryl, who's got enough money from his tradie job to buy a boat, is going to be so key to next year, because I think so many people in that category thought that National was going to print them a check, and it hasn't worked out. And exactly as you said, they've noticed their childcare costs go up. They've noticed, especially for their tradies, their work dry up, their apprentices disappear. Their groceries are still expensive. Their mortgages are still expensive. And that just leads to really jaded people.
Yeah.
And I think if you can turn around and go, hey, look, all of these things that we want, Otago, Nelson hospitals, all of these things that directly affect you, we can fix, is the drum to be banging. And it brings to mind a wee questionnaire went out for the local council down here that was basically a lead into going, you guys want less rates, don't you? And the overwhelming response they got back was, no, we want value out of the money that we give you. And I think that's a turning point for people, that it's not just a race to the bottom. We can have the nice things as well. It's just people need to do some heavy lifting.
Yeah, well, we do have enough. We actually do have enough. But what we're seeing is the extremities of inequality. 311 households hold more wealth than the bottom 2.5 million New Zealanders. I'll give you another stat. We actually don't have good data on who owns all of the properties in this country, because I really pushed for it, including under the last Labour-led government, but unfortunately wasn't able to get traction there. And of course, it was completely dumped as an idea when the Nats came to power. But I was looking for there to be a landlord register so that we actually understood how many landlords there are in the country. But right now, the best that we can kind of determine is looking at Companies Office data, Land Information New Zealand, and a range of other sources, bond lodgement data from MB. That tells us that we have approximately 120,000 landlords in this country, but we have more than 10 times that, more than 11 times that in the form of renters. We have 1.5 million renters in Aotearoa in New Zealand. Yet if you look at the way that public policy is set, it's very heavily skewed in the direction of the landlord. So again, we are just not seeing people understand currently at scale where power actually sits in raw numbers alone, because that's the other point of this, is that politics belongs to those who turn up. And right now, we know, particularly if you're talking, Chloe, about local body elections, that voter turnout is around 30%, 30 to 40% in any given area of the country. And that is disproportionately people who already own a property and have probably been there for a long time and are disproportionately older. That is in no way, shape or form anything antagonistic towards people who fit that demographic. But what we do know is that that demographic does tend to skew more conservative. And again, I actually think there's some interesting data that's starting to come out of generations like millennials, which shows that in fact they are not getting more conservative with age. But if you look at the general and typical trajectory of somebody's life, and again, this is massively oversimplified, but it makes a lot of sense. When you are younger, you tend to potentially have a more exploratory view of things. You're going, what is this world? How do these systems work? What's my place in this? Is this fair and is this just? And as you get older, the system requires you to participate in it and effectively then be somebody who has a stake in it, especially if you come to own a property or otherwise. And then you think about all of that rhetoric that you were talking about just before, Chloe, with regard to taxation or otherwise. And as you get older, you maybe own some stuff, you start to have a family, and that view, that perspective, potentially, again, oversimplified, but potentially narrows a little bit. And people understandably are thinking about the day-to-day and how they just survive. And you can come to understand how when a politician says, hey, I'm going to give you a tax cut and put more money in your back pocket tomorrow, not, hey, I'm going to do a 10-year infrastructure plan and figure out how we're going to tax the multi-millionaires to pay for it. And in 10 years' time, the country's going to be massively different and far more prosperous. Those are quite difficult things, understandably, for people to compute. Because when you're struggling on a day-to-day, unfortunately, the austerity trickle-down economics that right-wing politicians are selling sound attractive, but again, in reality, they just don't stack up.
Yeah. We're going to wrap up shortly. I want to ask you a couple of quick questions. Each of these questions I realise could be 20-minute answers. That's on you.
I'll be as sure as I can, guys.
While I'm asking these two questions, Stuart, do you want to check the chat for any questions? Remember, we tell people thanks for the chats, thanks for the super chats. There's no guarantee your question will get asked, even if you've done one. But here's one I want to put up first, Chloe. This is from Mama Mac. Thank you for the super chat. Was talking to a boomer, lifelong Labour supporter at my dad's 80th birthday earlier this year that voted Green for the first time because she thought Chloe would build the best world for her grandchildren. So that's a pretty cool chat there.
Far too Mickey. Shout out. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very affirming. I guess, as you can all assume, as politicians, we get a lot of hate. So it's nice to get affirmation. But if I can just point something out in that feedback, I do get so wary. It's very, very kind, but I get so wary when people put me on a pedestal, because I think that that's where unintentionally we can buy into some of the individualization that the right really want us to buy into. So we need each other, whānau. That's the key message from me. If anything, we need each other.
The kind of last two questions, sort of there's three questions here, but because I think it's really important we don't let it go and let it go away. And as I said, we could talk about this for an hour now, but what do we need to know? What do we need to be thinking about when we're looking at places like Gaza today?
What we need to know is that we are currently having a genocide live streamed on our cellular devices, and world leaders, so-called world leaders, are refusing to act. And that is, words fail me. Honestly, words fail me. Because we had spent, a year trying to get this government to act, and we thought that, potentially the likes of the findings and the outcomes from the ICJ and the ICC, the requesting, an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, and findings of plausible genocide, let alone all of the reports from NGOs internationally over the last not only few years but few decades. That should be enough to compel so-called leaders to act, but evidently it is not. We've been pushing this government to act for the last year, and they have refused to do so. So as of a week ago, I put an Israel sanctions bill into the biscuit tin. What's important for people to know about that is that if we get 61 non-executive members to sign on to support that legislation, then it bypasses the biscuit tin and gets onto the floor of the House. We had unequivocal support from Te Pāti Māori from day one. So with the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, that's 15 MPs from the Greens, 6 from Te Pāti Māori, that's 21. We are hoping to, I actually haven't checked in with Labour as to what happened in their caucus today, because there's been a few things happening with HYEFU. But given the statements that Labour has made, obviously really hoping that they come on board with that as well. That means that we need just 5 or 6 MPs from the government to use their conscience and to support this bill. We don't need Christopher Luxon anymore. We don't need Winston Peters anymore. And we definitely don't need that other guy. We just need politicians to use their moral compass. And I've asked the Prime Minister directly in question time a week or two ago if he would allow his MPs to use their consciences. Pretty to character and to type, unfortunately, he kind of refused to answer. But I think that that's something, if people who are concerned about this very literal genocide, that's something that people can do over the holidays, is contact their local National MP or even their local New Zealand First MP. I don't know if the other party's worth any of our time.
I noticed how you said "and the other guy" because he's like Voldemort. You're not allowed to say his name. Is that the vibe?
Well, he loves a platform, guys. I think it's that's what I've really struggled with, as I think a lot of people in progressive political circles have this year, is, if you think about something like the Treaty Principles Bill, if you think about all of the divisive and awful stuff that is happening, they are very clearly playing a strategy called constructive polarization. They are not aiming for half of the electorate. They don't care about half of the country. What they want is 10 to 15%, and they will get it by any means necessary. Yeah. And what I've been really heartened by is that despite their best attempts to divide us, I have not seen the country more unified in my entire lifetime. The people united, we will win.
That's quite a nice place to finish, actually. I was going to say something pithy about Christmas and stuff, but that's pretty nice. Is there any questions you really want to get to? And if you've still got a couple of minutes, Chloe, I'd like to bring Craig in. And maybe if you had a question for Craig or something, then we'll say goodbye to you and talk to him about HYEFU. Anything in the chat that you want to mention super quick, Chewy? Any questions?
No, you hit the one that I really wanted to put up. And just generally, there's a couple of questions saying that you were absolutely devastating in the House today. I haven't seen those clips yet, so
devastating being good.
Yeah. Yes, very pro you. Chloe, you were an absolute legend in the House today. So proud of your work. Keep it up.
I think it was the comment on austerity today, Chloe. I think we're going to play that from a news clip in a second. So, yep, very good. All right, well, let's bring Craig in from the CTU economist Craig Renney with us. Craig, good evening to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, now, Chloe's about to leave us and go and do real work, I think, not like what we do. But Chloe, yeah, even you said, Craig, great to have Craig here about HYEFU and to talk about it. Is there anything you want to ask him or mention to him or point to him before we say goodbye?
Something that I would love to set Craig up with, because I think that it would be really useful to have his explanation for in a way that makes sense to the average person, is the way that unemployment is baked into the way that this government is doing things. So, I mean, just structural unemployment effectively, and all of the decisions that have been made to cause that unemployment, how that unemployment is then resulting in less tax revenue, both in terms of GST because people don't have the money to spend, but then also obviously in terms of income taxes, and how that is perpetuating and deepening all of the issues that the government is talking about in terms of productivity, but also shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to their arguments around growth.
It's a great question, Chloe. I mean, you did right. Unemployment is both a symptom and a cause of the current problems that we have. So unemployment rises to 5.4%. It's actually better than where we thought it was going to be right now, about 6 months ago, which means the rise is even quicker than we thought it was going to be 6 months ago. By 2026, we've got 20,000 more people unemployed than we thought we were going to have just 6 months ago. So the rise in unemployment's really quick. And we end up in this loop, this doom loop, right? Where we say, so we don't have enough money, so we're going to cut spending, we're going to cut services. Those cutting of spending, cutting services. So we stop health and education. People don't get well, they don't get trained. Unsurprisingly, they don't get jobs. They don't deliver productivity. We don't deliver growth. We stop investing in schools, hospitals, roads, infrastructure. That then delivers fewer and lower growth, which then means, oh, we've lost some jobs, which then means we've lost enough money to the government. So we better cut again in order to make sure we've got the books balanced. So we cut again, and we then find, oh, hang on a second, there's less tax. There's less tax because there's less growth. There's less growth because there are more people unemployed. So we'd best cut again in order to make sure that we're going to end up with the right amount of money, and so on and so on and so on. Austerity inevitably eats itself. The only time austerity ever works is if you have a big structural change, and that big structural change means there's nothing you can do about it and you just got to cut some things, but you do it in a way that manages to bake in security for those affected workforces and do it in a way that manages that change well. What we're instead seeing is simply more cuts. We're instead seeing more reductions in investment. That's leading, unsurprisingly, to more unemployment, and we just go round the merry-go-round again. And, you know, the proof is positive because I'm looking at this lovely document here today, for those of you who have copies at home, and the numbers don't.
We can both hold ours up.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Sorry, Pat, come on.
I was going to say, don't lie. You've got yours, Chloe. But, you know, the numbers here don't lie, right? They're telling you that the current, you know, the austerity doesn't work, that the program of beatings until morale improves does not work. And so you're really right. What instead we need to be doing is actually investing. We need to be making sure that people have access to training, to skills, to delivering the kinds of, you know, building the housing that we need in this country, delivering the schools, hospitals, the renewable energy that we need in this country. There's never a cheaper time to do it than in the middle of a recession, which on Thursday we will discover we are in for the third time in a really short period of time. I come from the country that has destruction tested this, and we're going to very painfully learn the lessons again unless we choose to change course. Unfortunately, in this document, the budget policy statement,
no, it's not fair.
Love you. The budget policy statement, they're actually saying they're going to double down.
Yeah.
That they're going to deliver fresh rounds of cuts on top of the ones that are already there. That government departments should expect another year of zero increases to their budgets, which means real terms cuts, new real terms cuts on top of the real terms cuts they've already had. And again, we just go round the merry-go-round. So it's not great news. And a bit like, you know, I've been caught by the sun today, you know, and over the weekend. The books here are as red as you can possibly imagine. So it's not great news, and we can do so much better.
You can see, Chloe, why Nikki No Boats was scared to have him in the actual HYEFU lockup, can't you?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But I mean, that I think is one of the most profound things that I have realized about the way that this government is operating. And I would actually point this out about our Prime Minister. I think that, because I've spent a long time, again, to that point earlier around, I really try and understand the political strategy and try and take a good faith approach to understand where people are coming from in this stuff. And I was trying to understand why the Prime Minister hates being asked questions so much. And I think it's potentially just that CEO energy that comes from having been an employer in these, middle management, large organizations where you're an employer, you stand in front of your employees, you say, this is the way that the world works, and everyone says, thank you, we still have our jobs. I think that in this situation, being a Prime Minister and having to be accountable to the people of this country, whether it be through the opposition asking questions in question time, or journalists asking questions in lockups, or in the 4 p.m.s on Monday after cabinet, post-cab, that he doesn't feel like he needs to. He feels like that's just all he needs to do is to will something into being. But as Craig is really rightfully pointing out here, the numbers don't lie. The government is knowingly making decisions to deepen this recession and to make people suffer more. The government has knowingly made decisions. It's on regulatory impact statements on a bajillion different things, whether it's from the official advice that was on the emissions reduction plan, which says that it's going to cost the lowest income New Zealanders 4 times as much money as the wealthiest, whether you're talking about some of their budgetary decisions around benefits or otherwise, which will knowingly place thousands more children in poverty. This government is knowingly making decisions to increase inequality and to increase climate changing emissions, which are also terrible feedback loops which compound each other. And I guess if I can leave you guys with anything before you get into the detail of it all with Craig, it's that a different world is possible. Different decisions can be made. It can be incredibly depressing to realize that there are people in charge of this country right now who are making decisions to knowingly make things worse while telling you the opposite. Yeah. But it can also be incredibly liberating to realize that you are not crazy and that in fact, this is the reality and we can make different decisions. And the final thing to say is that the right really want us to conceptualize of the state as this thing to kind of put over there and see as separate from everything that the rest of us do. But the state is all of us. It is a functioning democracy. It is the infrastructure that everybody relies on. The notion of being self-made is completely ridiculous. Even those who could potentially claim to have come up with an idea in a vacuum still rely on the legal system to enforce their contracts, which is paid for by our taxes. And they still use our roads and they still rely on law enforcement and otherwise. So if I can leave you with anything, it's all made up. We can make different decisions. It can be remade, and the state is all of us.
Yeah. All right, Chloe. Hey, have a good break, as much of a break as you can get. Thank you for being with us. I don't know if we've actually mentioned it or noticed it, but did you notice Chewy's got he's lit up in green tonight? I can just sure that's a conscious decision.
It.
Just,
It's like when the Sky Tower lights up in green, and I'm like, it's for me.
The longer you talk, the greener my room gets.
Hey, Chloe, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Congratulations on what you've done this year. Congratulations on the co-leadership. Pass on our best to Marama if you happen to be speaking to her. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and we hope to speak to you again in 2025.
Absolutely, guys. And catch you later, Craig. See you guys.
Chloe.
Thank you. See you.
All the best.
Cheers, Chloe.
Green Party co-leader, Chlöe Swarbrick. Hey, Craig, how are you, man?
Oh, quiet, not a lot on, the usual, just sort of, just trying to see the days through to Christmas.
Let me just do one little bit of housework and admin. People who have done super chats and stuff, we're just going to talk to Craig now, then we'll get to everything in one hit. So we'll get mentioned. It'll get mentioned after this conversation because we want to talk about HYEFU. And actually, I saw your tweet today that said something like, "Yeah, no wonder they didn't want me in there because it was bad news bears." Let's have a look at One News and their report. Let's just look at this together to bring everyone pretty much up to date as to how they announced what was happening with the half-yearly update.
The future, with the opening of the books revealing the government's coffers are emptying out and the outlook is bleak with more pain ahead. Today's half-yearly update confirming the economic downturn started earlier, cut deeper and will take the country longer to emerge from. The tax take faces being $13 billion lower than predicted.
So I was saying earlier, that's a strangely specific number, quite close to 14 billion that they took out of those coffers. It's just a coincidence, I'm sure.
Oh,
May's budget.
Yeah, go Craig.
It's worse than that, because this is the half-year update. So the 14 billion is already out at the BIFU. This is on top. So,
shit.
So this is 20.
actually
This is 27 billion.
So this is more on top of all the numbers here will be the numbers on top of the numbers that were announced at the budget. So when you see $13 billion and you go, oh well, that's just the $14.6 billion tax program that they promised. No, this is new numbers on top of this. So this is the effect of a slower economy. This is effect of a lower population base. This is the effect of less spending. It's generally speaking, all of this is really bad news, bad news bear on top of existing bad news bear that had already turned up.
Thank you. We always like these conversations with you, Craig. You always bring the Christmas joy. It's fantastic. We'll keep going with the story, eh? Because we do want to know. There's our first headline you've just given us, and we are 21 seconds into the story.
Due to decreasing GST, business and worker payments, and government expenses are $1.4 billion higher than forecast, largely due to increased welfare, superannuation and education costs. So any return to surplus has been pushed out by at least 2 years, and government debt is tracking higher. The Finance Minister says this all means she has a big task ahead to find money to fund essential services. So
Can she ask the landlords? I'd say that she's trying to find it. Will those landlords have a bunch of pile of money like in their mattress? Can they get it from them? Maybe? No?
They could certainly contribute.
Yeah, maybe.
be more public sector cuts, no new initiatives for many government departments, and the hunt is on to find new ways of bringing in much needed cash. Business correspondent Katie Bradford reports.
I reckon it's going to be like cake stalls outside Parliament anyway to get money in to pay for their fucking tax breaks.
More protests in the capital. 50 WorkSafe employees are set to lose their jobs, monitoring health and safety, while the health of the economy is also under threat.
Yeah, because that's what you don't need. People keeping your workplace safe. Get rid of those guys. Sure, it'll be fine.
The hill we have to climb is steeper than it was a year ago.
Now, okay, we're going to cut through this. Is it true to say it's steeper based on their decisions? Have they piled on some more dirt to make that climb steeper than it even would be? Is that a pretty obvious statement, Craig?
It is, and it's obvious for two reasons. One, if you give away a large amount of money in a tax cut, in various forms of tax cuts, that's money that you do not have. And as a consequence, the books will look worse in exactly the same way as if you gave away a large amount of your salary and then told the bank, I've got a steeper hill to climb in order to pay the mortgage. Two, the effect of not investing, the effect of not spending, withdraws demand from the economy. If you fire somewhere in the order of 10,000 public servants, unsurprisingly, there will be less expenditure in the economy. As a consequence, people will keep their hands in their pockets. They'll be a little bit worried about their jobs. That will lead to less consumption. Lower consumption is exactly the lower GST and PAYE source deductions that the presenter at the start of the show talked about.
All right, let's keep going.
Gloomy, grim, no sugarcoating it. Treasury's forecasts have deteriorated on almost every single measure. Rising job losses and business failures have hit the tax take.
Did that $13 billion number surprise you?
Look, the extent of the revisions went beyond what I would have been happy with.
Translate, please, Craig. What does that mean?
What?
So the $13 billion in sort of lost tax over the period of time is quite a significant level of reduction in revenue. She's quite surprised by that because I believe she believes that GDP would have been or should have been stronger than the Treasury was forecasting. And as a consequence, she believes there's actually more money in the kitty than the Treasury is forecasting in those documents. Time will only tell.
But why? Sorry, I know you can't read her mind. Why did she believe those things? I mean, she's an English graduate. She must understand the numbers.
Simply because I don't believe that she thought that the tax and cut program that the Crown has put on the table in terms of the the decisions that they've made to date would have had quite the negative effect that they have. And as a consequence, they would have believed that if we give people tax cuts, they'll go out and spend that money. They will go out and deliver more growth. That everyone wins there, right? Except we know the winners from that story were very unlikely to spend that growth because they were already high income earners. So they were saving that growth, or they were paying off their mortgage, or they were doing other things. What they weren't doing was giving it to minimum wage workers or to beneficiaries who spend all of their income straight away because they simply don't have any other source of income. That's the kind of growth that's the kind of spending that delivers quick growth in localities. And as a consequence, we end up where we are with a lower tax take. And as we said at the start of when I came in, we go around the merry-go-round of fewer jobs, less tax, less growth, fewer jobs, less tax, less growth.
So, but that says to me that they're either incompetent because they didn't know what their decisions were going to lead to, or they're incompetent because they did and they're just lying about it now. Neither of those outcomes are particularly good for the voters, for the citizens of New Zealand.
I never want to accuse anyone of lying because I genuinely don't know someone's intentions. But what I do know is that we've tried this experiment many times, but it is a pervasive belief that if we simply, to use the jargon, consolidate the Crown's accounts, so we cut spending, then somehow magic growth will turn up. We've tried this many times before. It hasn't happened. The solution seems to be if we just try it harder, then it will eventually happen. There's no success yet, but God loves a trier.
All right, we'll keep going. You go. Sorry, Joe.
Something that gets mentioned. Socialism has never worked. It's good in theory. Can we say that about austerity at this point? Because so many governments have tried it, and every single one of them has got the same results. It does not work.
It's not so much that it doesn't work. It works for some people. So a very narrow bunch of people win. But two, I actually, I'm a trained economist for a living, right? Which is lovely for me. But I actually really care about what it does for people's lives, for their quality of life, for the length of their life. And we have really good studies like the Glasgow study in the UK, which looked at the impacts of the austerity program in the UK and found well over 300,000 deaths attributable to the austerity program in the UK over 10 years. So it's not so much that it doesn't work on the accounts. The accounting numbers in the long run are neither here nor there. They're just movements on a piece of paper. These are people's lives we're dealing with. And what I wouldn't want to see is that sort of thinking become embedded in New Zealand, because child poverty is already bad enough in this country. And we don't want to make it worse and embed that culture in here that actually we can somehow cut our way to freedom when we know we can't.
All right, let's keep going on the story.
Meanwhile, rising unemployment means increasing welfare payments.
I've been looking for a job since November last year. I'm desperate for whatever I can get. I prefer mainly like childhood education stuff, primary schools, and looking at retail jobs.
While household budgets remain tight, Nicola Willis will have to keep the government purse closed too. She's sticking to her planned operating allowance of 2.
I'm interested in Katie's framing there, though. Will have to. She's sort of saying, I mean, we've seen this before on all news medias, when they use the phrasing of the press release, will have to implies by the journalist, this is the truth. Is choosing to is probably a more accurate statement. And I think for those of us in this kind of independent media that don't follow that theme, we have to make sure that we always say, no, it's not will have to, it's is choosing to. Fair, Craig?
Absolutely. I mean, Chloe was exactly right beforehand. These are choices, and the government's making these choices at this point in time. It set itself some fiscal rules And in those fiscal rules, it's saying we have to abide by the rules that we ourselves have created. And so it's a choice rather than being a law of physics or anything else.
Yeah, we've been saying that about like budgets for, let's say, New Zealand Health, talking about we have to work within our budgets. And we've been pointing out, but remember, that budget is an arbitrary number set by this government. So what they're saying is we don't have enough money based on what this government said they're going to give us. Okay, so another answer could be give them more money and their budget would be different. Choices.
So there's a really simple way of thinking about this, right? Let's say you've got a budget of $1 billion, and you get to $1 billion, and if you spend one more dollar, you will deliver world peace, global happiness, and everything else, right? Would you spend that extra dollar, or would you say, no, hang on a second, I've got a budget of $1 billion, and that's it? Of course you would spend the money. These are just arbitrary lines. The real goal is actually working out what's value for money, what actually is delivering for people, what delivers great outcomes, and that's a much better way of looking at it than just here is a bucket and that's the only thing I can do.
When you started talking about $1 billion budget, I thought you were talking about our show there for a sec, Craig, because that's about what our budget is at the moment, isn't it, Chloe? About that, something like that. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
$6 billion in next year's budget. Much of that has already been allocated, leaving just $700 million. So more savings will have to be found.
That with a few exceptions, government departments will not be receiving additional funding.
A charity
choice. Again, choice. Will not be receiving choice. We're saying they won't.
Tax will be introduced in the budget to bring in more cash. The Finance Minister says lavish spending from the previous Labor government is to blame for the bleak forecasts.
Was Labor too trigger happy with its spending?
I think this government, the spending cuts that they have been making have made the economic situation worse for most New Zealanders. This government has been in office now for over a year. So far, all they've proven that they can do is blame everybody else for the consequences of their decisions.
This is the austerity playbook. It is to defund public services to failure, to watch them fail, point that out to the public, and then say, hey, we should privatise that.
Like so many others who've lost their job this year, it's tough out there for summer.
I'm scared what it's going to be like in the future. I have actually thought about it, thinking, it might just be easier going to Australia since everyone else is doing it and it's working for them, but I just can't leave.
Adding to the economic gloom, the minimum wage will go up by just 1.5%, the lowest hike in decades.
Katie, Nick.
Right, we'll leave it at there because one of the questions I want to ask you, rather than interrupting that, lavish spending by Labor. I mean, obviously there is impact from the years that have gone before. I'm not saying apportion the blame, but how much of what we're seeing now is based around, let's just say decisions of the last 5 to 10 years? How much of what we're seeing now is based on decisions based on the last 12 months?
Okay, so over the past 12 months, we've seen, cuts to very many public services. That's seen unemployment start to rise quite quickly in many places. The Treasury, in its documents, highlights that one of the reasons why spending is rising quite so quickly at the moment is essentially more people on job seekers support.
Yeah.
So that's in essence to blame for some of the short run increases in spending over the next couple of years. Essentially, some of the decisions that we've made over the past few months, they're driving those particular changes. The real goal here is actually problems we've done over the past 30 years. We've had governments try to catch up with investments because other governments haven't invested. We've had infrastructure spending speeded up in particular places because other governments have not invested during particular times. I don't think the previous government should apologise at all for using its fiscal firepower to save 20,000 lives during COVID.
Agreed. And businesses as well.
And
all
businesses,
those businesses that were
and
saved,
livelihoods and everything else. I don't think the government should apologise for investing more in health and education. It did that precisely because the previous government had underinvested. So, you can try and apportion blame. The real story here is when you're in government, you're in government. You own it. You don't get elected by accident. You choose to be elected. And so they've been in office for a year. The experiment is, the early results of their experiment are in. It's not working. Change what you're doing. If we look around the rest of the world, we see growth. If we look around, if we look at the US, we see strong economic growth.
Yeah.
Even the UK is starting to see economic growth. They're doing the exact opposite of what we're seeing in New Zealand. Now, I'm not suggesting it's quite as linear as that, it's quite as straightforward as that, but we're heading in a direction opposite to both economic thought, opposite to our history of economic experience over the past 40 years, and in a different direction to that found overseas, where results are better. I would put it to you that actually that suggests, you're on the wrong track and you should probably change.
Chewy, anything, sir?
This is some pretty gloomy stuff.
Well, so Chloe's exactly right here, right? Again, the good news is all these things are choices, right? We can choose to do something different, right? We can choose to deliver investment. We can choose to deliver more jobs. We can choose to get behind young people like Summer on the TV there and say, you want to work in early childhood education, where we have huge shortages of trained staff and a huge shortage of centres to deliver ACE, and the second most expensive ECE in the developed world. So how do I help you get into that sector? How do I help you get a qualification? And how do I help you have a great career? Instead, we've taken away first year free. Instead, we've taken away the apprenticeship boost program. Instead, we put up tuition fees by 6%. We've increased welfare by CPI rather than wages, which leaves those on welfare even further behind. But these are choices. We can choose to do something different and get different outcomes if we really want to. So you can be depressed, but actually, there's lots of things we could be doing different.
Any good news, Craig, in HYEFU? Like, honestly, anything that you went, that's not bad. Like, is there anything we can look forward towards?
Oh well, wait. I was born and brought up in the country of Margaret Thatcher, so the phrase "it could be worse" springs to mind. They could be privatizing the health service, but just wait for that one.
Wait for that
but
one.
in terms of it could be worse. They chose not to reduce the operating allowances even further, and they could have chosen to do that. They chose not to seemingly to disinvest even more capital, so infrastructure investment. But simple things, right? The Crown is going to reduce the investments identified for the New Zealand Super Fund in these books, right? So the next time the government tells us that superannuation in the long run isn't affordable and we need to do something about that, we should remind them, well, hang on, you're reducing the payments to the Super Fund right now, right? There's plenty of things in here, right? And in the long run, right? The good thing here is that the more they head down this route, we are 700 and odd days away from an election. This is the more and more this will be very unpopular. Chloe earlier in her speech talked about she didn't know what the strategy was, or it may have been you, Pat, saying you didn't know what the political strategy of this government is. To me, these books make extremely clear what the political strategy of the government is, which is that they hope we have forgotten by 2026 what they have done, and that interest rates are low enough so that mortgages are lower, people feel a little bit wealthier, house prices are rising, and we all forget. And that's the strategy.
I was pointing to Chewy because Chewy's been saying the whole year they're front loading all this bad shit, so they forget about it. I've got one more question. They've gotten this so wrong. They've gotten their projections so wrong, so they say. When you look forward the next sort of 12 months and hear what they're saying today in this cycle, what do you think they've got wrong, or what do you think is to come for the economy over the next 12 months?
What really worries me in this document, let's make a distinction here, because when we talk about they've got their numbers wrong, all the numbers come from the Treasury rather than from ministers. So it's not ministers have numbers wrong, it's the Treasury. But one of the things that really worries me is the GDP forecasts, because we go from 0.5% growth in June 2025 Suddenly, we spring by June 2026 to having 3.3% growth. At the same time as the government is cutting, at the same time as unemployment is higher, at the same time as, where we're investing less, business investment to June 2025 is going to fall by 3.2%. So private firms will be investing less and less next year. But suddenly, on these numbers, the economy is humming. If that number is wrong, we are even deeper in the hole than we thought we were going to be. And if that number is wrong, then unemployment will be higher and we've got even bigger troubles. So I'd love to know.
Merry Christmas, New Zealand.
Merry Christmas, New Zealand. I'd love to know where that sense of optimism in June 2026 is going to turn up, because the fundamentals, as we talk about in economics, there's nothing there except for rapidly reducing the interest rate and hoping the housing market kicks back in and praying like hell people start going to the bank again to borrow because they feel a little bit wealthier because the value of their house has gone up. But there's nothing fundamental about jobs, government investment, or anything else that's driving that growth.
Craig, sorry, Chloe, I was going to say, Chloe, anything from you or anything from the chat you want to get in there as we wrap?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions for you, Craig, if that's okay.
Of course.
Craig, what's going on with the ACC stuff?
So the government has created a new measure. Stay with me. So Obigal, which is the operating balance excluding exceptional gains and losses.
Obigal X.
They've now created Obigal X, and X excludes the ACC measure, the ACC balance.
Makes the books look better than they are, though, eh?
Yeah, by about $4 billion.
That's $4 billion.
Now the Crown says it's doing that because ACC's books balance over the long run, and they've got very little to do actually with what government spending is doing because they come from levies. The reality is that ACC's funding comes from two sources, which is levies and the government, because we have an account called the non-earners account for everyone who's not currently contributing an ACC fund, but who gets to claim against ACC. When that is in deficit, as it is now, the Crown has to pay. So we've just simply removed it. It's not best practice internationally, and all it does is it just simply obfuscates a number which isn't really helpful.
I love it when we come across all these things that could be sayings for the national government. It's not best practice internationally. National 2026. What else, Joey? Anything?
A little bit more fun question for you there, Craig. Who's worse, Liz Truss or Nicola?
Well, I mean, Liz is gone. So she can't do any more damage.
Too.
Yeah,
she's automatically better.
So
by omission, better by omission.
And she's acting as a tremendous recruiting sergeant for anybody with any brains to join any party other than the Conservative Party in the UK. Nicola, sadly, is still in office. Looks likely to still be in office, and as a consequence, we have real challenges because the strategy that sets out again in this document for all your readers at home just doubles down on where we are today. And so that's a real worry to me, is that there's no new thinking despite the evidence having changed.
Very good. Have those t-shirts turned up yet?
They haven't. I'm hopeful. It may well be the Christmas post. I'm not going to blame my brothers and sisters at the Postal Workers Union of Aotearoa, but it may well be just the volume of traffic right now.
Craig, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You know that. And when we were talking with the whānau watching last week, we were talking about fan faves. We were who the fan faves, get them on, and your name was definitely in there amongst the people that our guys watching and listening love to hear from. So thanks for being a part of what we've done this year. We have got a bit of a plan about getting you more involved in some reporting for us next year. We're working on that for you to keep you in those lockups rather than allow them to exclude you. I was wondering, did the Taxpayers Union get an invite from a media company to get in there, or did the platform get in there? Because they would both also be excluded based on those criteria. Do you know?
No, they didn't. The only person who got in, who was noted, but unusually, was Matthew Hooton.
Oh.
So Houghton was in the lockup, I believe as a representative of Metro Mag.
Oh, there you go. Representative of BHN.
Yeah, and so as a consequence, so in preparation, gents, I've started with the beard work, and hoping, by the time of the budget, it'll be sufficiently large that it'll be fairly obvious who I'm working for.
Very good. And of course, you've got the uniform coming out to you in the form of Nicky Nobo's t-shirts, and we haven't yet got Chewy. Chewy don't even know this, but the t-shirt that what was it?
Fight back together, Maranga Ake.
Yeah, there's a couple of them coming out to us, Chewy. So we've done a swapsies. Choices. But Craig, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on board. Always great to talk to you. Always want to have you on. And have an awesome Christmas and have a good break. I was hoping you're getting a decent break, and we'll catch up in 2025.
Thank you. One final thing, just in case readers haven't had enough depression for the year. Thursday, we will get new GDP numbers, and they will confirm very likely that we're now in a triple dip recession. So look forward to that as your sort of sign off to the year. Is that when you're around the barbecue at Christmas with that family member who just won't listen or just won't take no for answer or blames the previous government for what's going on, there's plenty of evidence we can point them to about what's really going on right now.
All right, Craig, have yourself a merry little Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. And again, thanks for being a part of what we've been doing.
Thanks, gents.
Thanks,
Craig Renney from the CTU.
I hate being right about this. All of
bad things. Right about bad things.
Yeah, because Facebook is starting to remind me of things that we were talking about a year ago.
Oh, bloody Facebook.
The actual language that was used by Nicky and the Bish about the ferries. That was like this time last year.
Secondhand Corollas.
Right in the guts of the secondhand Corolla. Don't need to buy a Ferrari, all of this sort of stuff. And we rightly mocked them for it at that point. And here we are a year later. We were fucking right. We were right to mock them for it. We have been right about the direction that this government is taking us more often than we're wrong. Like, there were times at the start there where I'm like, this is, maybe we're being a little bit hyperbolic. Surely they won't crash us this quick.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they've done. And what they're doing is they're relying on the fact that when they use the language of like, times are tough, we need to tighten our belt, that makes sense to someone on a personal level, right? Because that's how an individual would react. And that's how individuals are reacting. Times are uncertain. They don't know whether they're going to keep their job. So I'm going to hold on to as much money as I can. I'm not going to spend it. I'm not going to put it into the economy because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or I've lost my job and I have no choice that I can't spend anymore. GST goes down. Local businesses don't get what they usually get. All of these things, they spiral. People are late on their mortgage payments. People aren't able to pay their rates bills. All of these things spin out of that. Tightening your belt makes sense on an individual point of view or from a business. It's reversed when you start talking about governments.
Yeah.
Times are tough. Governments borrow and they build things.
And they make it back when times are good. And then there is more tax take because people are spending more.
You take your foot off the gas. Everything's doing great. We don't need to do anything. Taxes rolling in. Fantastic. And that's where you get the surpluses and you start putting it away for a rainy day so you don't need to borrow so much next time. We borrowed our way through a pandemic because we had to. People needed to pay their mortgages. Businesses needed to keep their doors open. It avoided mass unemployment. Because if that wasn't there, that's exactly what the businesses would have done. They would have cut loose their biggest expenses, their workers.
Yep.
And the workers would have gone on a dole en masse.
Yep.
People would have defaulted on their mortgages. They would have been kicked out of their homes. It would have been a shit show. So the government borrowed. and they get criticised for doing that. Now we've got a government that doesn't have any of those pressures, those external crises, and they are still borrowing. And they are borrowing to give money to their mates and at the same time turn to us and say, there's not enough money for you guys. No hospital, no ferries, no pay rises. Like they increase the minimum wage because it doesn't keep up with inflation. They've delivered us a pay cut.
Yeah, it's a cut in real wages.
Like this, there's anybody that talks to you about National being great economic managers, you need to bash them over the head with everything.
No,
you have.
Not metaphorically
speaking.
Thank you.
They are not good economic managers because they have failed to learn the lessons of so many governments around the world and other national governments right here 30 years ago that this shit doesn't work.
Yeah. Some
people make out like bandits. Those people donate to the National Party. You, me, the normal people, we don't. I'm not on starvation wages. I'm pretty close to the median wage in New Zealand, the average wage, whichever one it is. I'm not an economist. I don't know. And it's tough for me. It shouldn't be tough for me. And if it's tough for me, it's a hell of a lot tougher for people with kids or on a shorter wage or on a more labourer's job or something like that. And of course, they're looking at Australia. That's why we're hemorrhaging people. And if we hemorrhage those people, we need to bring other people in to fill the gaps. And then that opens, like, if you start down that track of, it's real easy if you don't have the money to go to Australia and you haven't got a job, and then someone is bringing in foreign workers to fill the jobs that they won't give you, that gets real fucking ugly real fucking quick.
Yep, 100%. I just saw a comment here, and you know that I love my religious talkback and stuff. One of the greatest comments I've ever seen. Corsa says, for a Christian, Luxon makes a great Roman.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. The comment, that is, not the context. Context is horrifying. But the comment is very, very good. Hey, we should get to some super chats and stuff, and then I want to do a little bit of housekeeping at the end of the show, and then we've got a few things to tell you about as well. So we'll go through a few of these now. David Thompson, people outside of Wellington don't get to see how fine Hottie McAnulty dresses for a bloke who used to drive a ute that had bits missing. Kiwi Bird said green buffer, which we'll talk about shortly. That's what Chloe is. Yeah, there you go. Very good. Is Chloe on Blue Sky? I didn't ask that question, but she's not. I just had a look. JC and the Pigeon Cats, Chloe, you are an absolute legend of the house today. That's what we're talking to her about. We are so proud of your work. Keep it up. Lurchy for $20. That's a generous super chat. Thank you. It's not hard. There are two ways to maintain or grow the tax base. One, increase the tax rate percentage, or two, grow the economy. These gronks, we'll go with gronks, have fucked it up on both counts. Says the short one, I challenged my MP over the sanctions members bill yesterday. He kept denying genocide, but I called him out hard. Keep up your excellent mahi, Chloe. Yep, that's for Chloe, I'm sure. I'm sure she's still watching. Read The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, says Peter. It's a book recommendation. Hard on Collider. Hadron Collider?
Hadron Collider.
Hadron Collider. I got the R and D the wrong way around, didn't I? That's why I saw hard on. Sorry about that. This government isn't just anti-worker, it's anti-citizen. Yep, very true.
Sorry, did you say hard on Collider?
Something like that. Because I got the my little dyslexic brain.
Sorry, Hadron.
They're wrong.
We've both confirmed you need to change your display name to Hard On Collider.
Tano says, what exactly would 35 cents buy? One, maybe two extra slices of bread split between a family of six, for fuck's sakes. Six. That was a left off the end. This person's called Hadron Collider, and I know that because I can read. Question for Chloe, do you think it was a mistake for Labor not to have campaigned on a wealth? I think we kind of covered that off as well, though, but thank you for your message there. XL Deer for $5. Definitely discuss and keep it out of the political ads. You can't sell it that way. Do you think that's the capital gains tax, maybe?
Yes, or the Greens tax policy. That comment came in a bit while we were having that discussion.
All right.
I'm really torn because I see what you mean there. Like maybe it's not a winner, but maybe we need to start discussing tax like adults. Like, and I think the answer to that is: do you earn over $130,000 or $180,000 or whatever the marker was that Greens were using? Because at that point, the question goes away. And if the answer is yes, I do make that much, you go, well done. You're comfortable. You can afford this, and it won't dramatically change your life.
Rajan, Chloe, any chance of a memorandum of understanding with Te Pāti Māori? Max Power, I was pretty upset about the fast track bill passing third reading today. What are your feelings toward this? Our apologies that we didn't get to ask all these questions, but we want to acknowledge your super chats especially. I was an ACT supporter that switched to the Greens. Listening to you, Chloe, debate David helped me change my mind for the better and value equity. That's a shame we didn't get that one to Chloe. That's a pretty cool.
We thank Chloe for that specifically because Kiwi is a big supporter of us and a lovely person to have around.
You wouldn't. There's a good video that represents Craig's point regarding the flow-on effect of unemployment, but I can't remember it, but it's perfect for this point. Okay, so we're going on a random search.
It's one we've played on the show. It's the Labour Party UK ad about austerity.
Gotcha. And it shows that spiral. Yep. You're right. Yep. I remember exactly what it is, actually. Rob says, does the subsistence, got it there, subsistence living achieved on minimum wage discourage productivity? Sorry, I didn't get a chance to answer that, Craig. Kahunu, because they are wealthy and sorted. Yeah, that's pretty much the answer for everything. BHN hashtag fail trail plus 27B deficit at the HYEFU. Lurchify, thank you as well. The poor don't shop. Bullshit income distribution will deliver a bullshit economy. Also says there's something incredibly frustrating and futile in having a government that understands the cost of everything, Chewy, and the value of nothing. Fetu says, so how do we fight the trend towards privatisation? Another one from Lurchy, Nikki No Boats, let us spray. Says the short one, where we are all fucked if we don't step up to fight this. A couple more. Another one from Max. Thank you, Max. $10 super chat. My partner is Korean. They're saying that Hyundai is loving that New Zealand cancelled the ferries as they were losing out. Yeah, that's an interesting point because it's such a good deal. Hyundai is saving millions by the cancellation. We're losing out. Womp womp. Chris says, if I wanted to buy a second-hand Corolla, I could do that tomorrow instead of 2029. That's a good point.
And do you know
that
why?
One.
There's shitloads of Corollas.
Yeah.
There's not 24 of them.
Yeah. 24 of them that aren't available as well.
Mm.
So you go from the most common form of transport to probably the least common. 24 in the world. Excel Deer, Chewy, that's why I said discuss, but not ads. Easy for NACT to spin into fear. Yeah, it's an interesting point, actually, because we do at some point have to go, okay, it's a time for the adults to talk as well. So where's that line between going, let's not do something silly that can be spun into a fear tactic, but also we actually need to go, we need to be adults about this as well and explain why this is a good idea. So it's finding that sort of balance, I guess.
I mean, let's be honest here. By the time the elections roll around and we have a leaders debate, okay, and hopefully they don't do that foolish thing of like, oh, we're only going to talk to the two big parties. I thought
you were going to say kicking us off YouTube. I thought you were going to say that foolish thing about getting us off YouTube, banning us.
Yeah, maybe we'll be doing it for a 1 year studio by the time the elections roll around.
Well, because it's been sold in a firestorm. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Fire sale.
We've picked it up cheap, like you picked up our t-shirt printing gear. Can you imagine? Okay, first of all, Luxon is a terrible communicator. right? Can you imagine Chloe having her wish and going at him over this sort of stuff, right? And then every time it just becomes like a wrestling match, like a tag team. Can you imagine Chippy, Chloe, Debbie, all of those guys just playing off each other to attack this uncommitted, uncoordinated rabble that we have in government? Do you think Winston's going to have the back of Luxon or Seymour? Even if he doesn't like the other mob, he's not going to have someone's back.
No.
Seymour's not going to do the same for Winston. He's not going to do the same for Luxon. He's demonstrated that. And Luxon doesn't have the chops to go against a coordinated front that could be. I still stand by the fact that Chloe is a world-class communicator of complex issues. She is unbeatable. We had a right-wing supporter in the chat there saying that she was doing a word salad. No, my dude. Like, you're confusing an insult that we've used against your side, and you've tried to reverse it. But it doesn't work because she's not doing a word salad. She's illustrating quite complex concepts and cause and effect and a hopeful view of the future. And that's what's confused you because you're unfamiliar with these things.
And if anyone's feeling too depressed, that's why I made sure Nala, hey, Nala, man, she's not dead. I was just checking in. All right, yeah, go.
One day,
one day I'll do it. She'll be dead.
No, dogs never die.
All right, team, let's do a little bit of finishing houseworking because we want to tell you about this. The store is back and open. We had guests, so we're doing it at the end rather than the start. So what we've done, as you can see, is all of those, or the 3 t-shirts are available in that cool rust color. See that? The rust color. But we've also brought back orange and black marl and green. So I've ordered a whole bunch of those, but because we've had to order early, there's a limited run of them. I've made a decision as well. I said that if you bought some merch, a t-shirt in particular, whilst the show was on live, then I would throw in a sticker or 2. If you buy a shirt this week, Monday to Thursday, we'll throw in, a sticker or 2 as well. It depends how many we've got. It won't necessarily be a sticker that you're like. If you buy a buffer, it may not be a buffer sticker. It might be, may not be. But if you buy a t-shirt, we'll throw a sticker in there just to say thanks for being a part of it in Christmas week. And if you want to know what the stickers are, there they are. Nikki No Boats, Buffer 1, Chewy Fufu. Apparently there's a Pat Fufu. I don't think it's going to be anything like yours though. And a BHN as well. And of course there are some more sticker packs as well, 4s and 8s, which are all there. So that's open and running. And that's going to be running probably right through the summer, but we've ordered the stock, and when the stock's gone, the product's gone. So the numbers will come down as we go through the summer. So if you want any of these things, I would get in sooner rather than later. The second thing is a huge thanks to all of our patrons who are a part of what we do. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News is our patronage. You guys really do keep the lights on. And we do things like super chats, which are great, and we have merch store, which is great. But the thing that gets us through like this Christmas period when we don't have any live shows for super chats, or there'll be fewer people on the store, are the patrons. So you are really the foundation of us being able to do this. If you want to be a part of what we're doing, if you're enjoying what we're doing, if you've been a lurker for a while and you're kind of going, yeah, it's probably about time. If you're paying $15 a month to go to Netflix and we're giving you something here, maybe you can look at our bottom plan, which I think is about $5 a month. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And I think that's about it, Chewy. I was going to talk about Twitter tonight, but it's been quite I think we've had enough negativity from old mate Craig that maybe we don't need a bit more. But it has been fun over on Twitter today. I got involved in some conversation. Oh, I'll show you. This is Peter's fault. Who was in the chat tonight because he said this last night. So it's Peter's fault because I said viewer last night had a brilliant point. What company would hire Nicola Willis as CFO? If the answer is none, she isn't qualified, so why would you put in charge of the nation's books? to which there was a huge amount of pushback. And of course, as you can see straight away, what about Grant Robertson? So I did a bit of research on Wikipedia. Grant Robertson actually worked for a company that looked after funds and with projects in diverse areas such as basic education, healthcare, public sector capacity, small business development. Kind of sounds like what a minister would do. Sort of something in there. And then, of course, people talk about Michael Cullen. Michael Cullen's got a PhD in the history of economics. So they have a tacit connection to the finances. But, of course, these people never look at those things. Look, same argument for PM. Look, Grant Robertson, Michael Cullen. So I just went through and, look, you can see I had a bit of fun today educating people. It was good fun. The other one, of course, was if Willis, Luxon and the rest were not choosing to take in $17 billion less based on their tax cuts and landlords' beliefs, would today's HYEFU been bad? And I'm like, can I be honest?
You got owned in the first comment. What are you talking about?
I know.
First comment,
textbook
absolutely
left card,
destroyed.
only interested in one side of the story.
He called you a left card. That means you lose.
But then
you
just said
you lost the argument.
Dishonest actor, and I got more votes than that person did. Most people were agreeing, and then I did play a little bit. I had a bit of fun here as well. Inherited shambles from Labor, said I wasn't interested in whataboutism. Did that one go on? Did I get to use the moving the goalposts? One of the people moved the goalpost, and I got to use that GIF, which I love so much, which is the people running the soccer goalpost across the field, which I do love.
Winning an argument in GIF form only. I know it's frowned upon, but God, I enjoy it. Did you get to say to anybody that you fucked their mum? Because you included me in this before, so you said you learned something from me, so I assume that's the lesson that I have to give. You did, didn't you, Pat? Look at how happy you are behind you.
No, I feel a bit bad about it, but in the moment it was quite interesting. And then
it carries on. You said that you fucked their dad.
No. I said that the person could call me daddy from now on if they wanted to, but I didn't have to because. And I did. Maybe I said something like, "And can you say, Mum, I say hey because I had to block her because she was coming back time and time again." So I've never ever done that before, but I was just channeling Chewy's.
Oh.
Are you proud of me at all, even a little bit?
I am proud of you.
Okay.
You've come so far.
Thank you. That's what your mum said.
Terrible. I see what you did there.
Yeah, same.
Hey,
sorry, we're not this mature.
I've just spotted a comment in the chat. I was unaware of this. Pat, did you see the Harry Tam interview with Oliver?
I don't know if it was Harry Tam. I actually listened to it.
Oh, really?
It was Harry. Now, Harry, it depends because the person on the interview gave his surname and it wasn't Tam. Now, of course, Harry Tam, that might be his middle name. I may be ignorant to it, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll text Harry tomorrow and ask him who it was. Because the person who was on also said he was a member of the Mighty Mongrel Mob. And I think Harry Tam is a bit more delicate with how he says it because he works with everybody that is hard to reach.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's what made me kind of think when I heard it and the person said, I'm a member of the Mighty Mongrel Mob. I was like, okay. And I was thinking, if this is Harry, I don't know if he'd do that. So I don't know. I did hear the interview, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah. So, here we go. What does that one say? Free soul. I saw it, Sarah. Not sure it's Harry Tam. I couldn't get over how fat Plickett is looking. Well, it's Christmas. You're fattening up your pigs. You know, isn't that what you do for Christmas? Something like that. All right, guys. Now, listen, we had some requests out tomorrow for some more of your fan favourites. They haven't come together yet, so we'll see what happens tomorrow night. I don't have any teasers for you, but remember, Thursday night, we're going to get the whole hosting whānau together. That is Magenta and Emily and Chewy and me, and of course, Nala. Yeah, you too. Actually together to have a bit of a last show. You know, Chewy, here's something for you. Here's a little, because I like to go through the numbers. So I'll do a bunch of the numbers and like where we are today. As I was looking through some of the numbers, I found a show from 2 years ago, like a whole show, not a clip. You ready? 22 views.
Oh, we would have been stuck.
22 views. Honestly, I was talking to my partner and going, what? Last night's show, 5,000. Just the show, not the clips. Clips today, another 5,000 on YouTube only. And it's just indicative of, like I said to you the other night, mushy crying time will be Thursday night. I love you guys so much.
It's lucky we're not a fight club because you guys are all breaking the rules.
Yeah. So I said the other night, not to repeat myself, the reason that Duncan Garner's thing is not going, the reason it's not going is they don't know how to do community. But the other thing I realized, Chewie, which I didn't say, is you guys, the community we have now, this is a 2 to 3 year project. So someone turns up tomorrow and starts doing what we're doing, they have a 2 to 3 year runway to get to this community. So I think we're stuck with each other, guys.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other way to say it, but I think we're stuck with each other. Oh, Harry, did you talk to Plunkett? People are saying you were on Plunkett the other day, and I didn't think it was you. The other reason that Duncan Garner's not working, according to some, is that he's a knob end. Yeah, so that's what it is. It's community. It's all it is. It's community, because without the community, there'd be nothing here. I feel like we need to wait now to hear from Harry. Are we waiting? Someone's just messaged Harry going, they're talking about you on BHN. Well, you just text me, Harry. Sheesh, brother. Anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like this is a consistent comment that we've got when people find us is, oh shit, I found my people. And they're not talking about me and you, Pat. They're talking about the other people in the chat.
And Nala.
The people on the Discord, the people on our Facebook page and that sort of thing. Like this is since the election, like the comment of there are groups, there are people that feel like they're under attack by this government, that it's never ending. And certainly we reminded them of that 5 nights a week now. But it's important to know that you're not alone in it. And it's important to know that other people around you have a plan.
Yeah. And
we try to put people in front of you that will give you the ammunition to work out where to now. And at least some sense of hope. I mean, so someone was saying, what's the next step? And if they privatize the healthcare system, the next step for me is flipping over cars in the street. I'm going to follow the French model when they tried to up the retirement age. They started burning shit in the street.
Yeah, no, confirmed. Wasn't Harry. Didn't think so. People were saying, Harry, that you're on the platform, and I didn't think it was you. And that's what we're just confirming. One more thing, right? And those of you who do hang out with left media will know that there's a bit of a downslide from TYT at the moment, that there's a pivot coming from those guys, the Young Turks, pivot to the right. Right now, we have 1,017 people watching us live. Earlier, when Chloe was on, it was up to about 1,250, right? We've got 14,000 subscribers. TYT has 6 million. Here's a snapshot that I got this morning. 74 people watching.
Ooh.
74 people watching. Now, there's a huge part of that is that people are leaving in droves. As of right now, you can see it right there, 6.07 million subscribers. This is the damage report, so it's not their main show. 74 watching. That actually went down at one stage to 21. This is a community. Proportionally, this should not be happening in a country this size. 1,000 live viewers for this kind of thing should not be happening in a country this size. America is 70 times our size. 70 times 1,000 would be the equivalent of a live stream show in America having 70,000 live viewers. This is not supposed to be happening, but it's community. We've found our tribe on some level. And I think we put on a fun and entertaining show. And I think that's enough advertising for us. We get to stop patting ourselves on the back now because it's starting to feel a tad awkward to be completely.
Yeah, we don't want to get through all of that. On the second night of the week, we've still got 2 or 3 days to go for more back patting.
Yeah, we do indeed. All right, Whānau.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peace and the rights.
It's because, John, you don't see all the people on Facebook and Twitter and Twitch at the same time. We get the combined view. That's why. Just explaining.
Down to a welcoming vibe with an A and a sub and a higher in mind. All heavily either this way or that, and will be analyzed by butchery and pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's big hairy news.
All right, team. That's us. Hope you're well. Hope you had a good day. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. And look forward to seeing you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. That's it for me, Chewy.
I would recommend the Reddit subreddit Confidently Wrong for reasons. Have a good night, everyone.
All
See you
right.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Hooroo.